All right, let's go in our Bibles to the book of Esther. The book of Esther, and I am so excited. I'm just very thrilled with some of the truths here and just want to share them with you. I feel like I'll do a lot of reading and jumping around, but mostly I want us to just be excited about the Lord and that just He's in charge. And so let's start with Esther 5. Esther 5, we'll go there. Esther chapter 5. So may the Lord do a special work in this week, tonight, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with the NBT crew. And use us. May these young people grow, if the Lord tarries, to do mighty things for the Lord, soft before what's on the Lord's heart. Esther 5, let's start there in verse 9. Then went Haman. So he's the bad guy. Haman. But he's having a pretty good day here. Did you know people that are aimed at wickedness sometimes seem to be having a good day? That's where we find Haman here. Because you see, then went Haman forth that day joyful. You're like, oh, hey, that's a good thing. Well, he was joyful over the wrong things. But let's keep going. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But now Haman, we say Haman, but Haman, when he saw Mordecai, he did the same thing I just did. He's like, Mordecai. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. I'm talking bitterness. He could not stand Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. This guy, commendable, lots of self-control. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. He's like, Mordecai, you're not going to ruin my day. And when he came home, he sent and called for his friends. So Haman had his friends. And Zeresh, his wife. So he's surrounded by wife and friends. This is wonderful, right? And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him and how he had advanced him above the princes and the servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, and he must not have known the connection between Mordecai and Esther, because here he's excited about Esther the queen. Yea, the queen, Esther the queen, did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she prepared, but myself. We had a 3-person banquet, the king, the queen, and me. That's how important I am. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet, verse 13, yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai. For us, it's like Haman. For him, it was Mordecai. Mordecai the Jew, sitting in the king's gate. Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high. And tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily. When everything's going your way, it seems like you're pretty happy now, but you could really be happy if you get rid of this Jew, this guy that doesn't seem to want to worship you like the others that bow before you. Then you can go on merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. So in his mind, they're going to hang Mordecai. Now, probably most all of us, I see Irvin's little one there. I see Ethan's little one there. I imagine Stephen hasn't thought, when I finally go, what's that going to look like? I don't think maybe he's thought of that, but most of us have. Most of us have thought, Lord, I'd kind of like to just be sleeping and then suddenly be with you. And I know everyone doesn't get to enjoy that, but I'd kind of like that for me, right? And probably most of us, if we've been down the road for much at all, you're like, hanging. No, thank you. Lord, if it's all the same to you, I would like to not go by hanging, or burned at the stake or drowning, or, we probably all have our list, right? And so he's like, I'm going to get rid of that Mordecai, and when I hang him, and not just hang him, but build this gallows that's 50 cubits high. So a cubit, I think but kind of from here to here is a cubit. So about 18 inches, so a foot and a half. So if you multiply 50 times 1.5, you get a 75-foot tall gallows. So if you think of a building and each story is roughly 10 feet, and I know it varies, but if you think each story roughly 10 feet, a 75-foot gallows, we're thinking of a gallows as tall as a 7.5. That'd be a funny story, huh? For the half story for shorter people. 7.5 stories tall. This gallows that he built. Boy, there is some real hatred here. It isn't just like, it's like, I hope he has a hangnail some point today. This is awful hatred. And we'll see more of his hatred as we look at it. So my title for tonight, I want to wait on. I want to give you my title after a bit. I'm still working on it. No, I'll give that to you after a bit. So here's this man, Haman. He's in love with himself. He seems to be preoccupied on the importance of himself. He's in love with himself and enraged because Mordecai doesn't seem to love him as much as he does. Not only was he upset with Mordecai, but we'll see that he was upset with the people of God as well, the people of Mordecai. It seems like Haman was on the top of the world and unstoppable. It seemed like everything was going his way. Well, what happened? Well, what we'll see as we look at the passage, there will be times, even for us, that it will seem like things are spiraling so out of control, and then the wicked person seems to have maybe, Lord, I don't know if you can even, it seems like this wicked plan has so much momentum that I'm not even sure you can stop it at this point. Do we ever get to that point? If there was a time in the Bible, it seemed like right here, wickedness had so much momentum that it probably seems nearly impossible that it could be turned around. And yet, most of you know, this story ended very differently than the way Haman thought it was going to. All right, so I have 3 points for Haman. And I know Esther is pivotal to the story, but I want to zero in on Haman and Mordecai. And so Haman, I want to give you 3 points for Haman. We want to look at his promotion, his elevation to power. I want to look at his pride. He was given honor, and he demanded. I demand honor, and I'm worthy of it. And that's a dangerous place when we go through life feeling like I demand to be honored. I'm worthy, and I despise the people that don't honor me enough. Boy, the Christian should be, Lord, I want to use my strength to honor you. And if you'd let me point the gaze at people around me toward you, oh, Lord, that would make me so happy. Some lessons there for us as well. I want to be honored, and I'm worthy of it. And so we see his promotion and his pride and then his plot. We'll see that he devised a plan to get rid of Mordecai, and not only him, but all of the Jews in the land. Then we'll look at Mordecai. We'll look at his determination, and I guess we could also say his devotion. I'm not going to bow down to a man. I'm not going to worship. And so this is more than just giving respect. This would have been, we'll look at it, but akin to the bowing down that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to do. I reserve worship for God alone. These high officials were honored as gods. And Mordecai, I will not honor any man as a god. I will not do it. So there was determination, devotion, but then there was the danger. Did you know when you stand for right, sometimes you're in danger? And then you're like, well, and then not only you, but sometimes the threat is if you do that, the danger won't just come for you, but others as well. Are you sure you want to take this stand? That comes to all of us. It's like, well, I think I would do the right thing if it was just me, but this affects more than just me. And that's a temptation to consider, maybe I can just cave because it's not just me in this instance. And so we see determination and devotion, then we see danger, and then the last thing with Mordecai is deliverance. Again, how wonderful that this whole story that seemed like there was only one end that could take place ended very differently. We'll pray and then we'll look at it. Lord, I do pray that you'd meet with us tonight, move in hearts. Lord, please stir. Help us to just rejoice in you. God, we sometimes, we kind of pull you down to our understanding and make you smaller, Lord, and you're so infinitely wonderful and grand and majestic. Lord, you don't lose track of anything. And we just praise you, Lord, that even when it seems like the momentum of the wicked is just too great, even for God to do something about, there's never a time, Lord, when the difficulty is too big for you. Help us, Lord, because we all go through things where we begin to doubt, we begin to wonder. And I pray, Lord, that as we look at this tonight, we would see once again that you're in charge, you're entirely trustworthy, Lord. And I pray that it would encourage us to do right and trust you. To do right and to trust you. Help us with these things, I ask them in Jesus' precious name. Amen. All right, so we're back to Haman. And so we see his promotion, first of all, his promotion, his elevation to power. So let's go back to chapter 3. Esther chapter 3. Let's go back there. By the way, Haman, in some ways, I see him as a type of Antichrist. He probably didn't even realize how much the devil was going to use him to wipe out the people of God, the very people that God was going to bring his Messiah through. And so in many ways, as Haman here, in my mind, the same way that pride came in and destroyed the devil, turned him from one of the most beautiful creatures of God's creation into one of the most dark and murderous and cruel and awful creatures. Pride is terrible. We sang that song a couple months ago in men's prayer on Saturday night. When I survey, and we came to that one line that really laid hold on my mind, and pour contempt on all my pride. Pride is ruining Christian lives. Pride is ruining churches. Oh God, help us to be fearful of pride. Haman's promotion, his elevation to power, verse 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him. So we see all these words. He was promoted and advanced. And again, this isn't it's not evil to get a promotion, but it seems like not only was the king promoting him, but Haman is like, yes, and I'm deserving of all these things. And it reminds me of the I wills of the devil. I will be this great, and I will. Advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. So we see this elevation, and again, even Daniel was elevated, but there was a humility there. He was a king. Make no mistake, he comes first. And he was promoted as well. But here, Haman is promoted, and he thinks himself worthy of all these things. By the way, it's interesting, isn't it, when it calls him an Agagite. That's a mouthful, isn't it? We're not entirely sure, but a couple commentators said that he was a descendant of King Agag, the Amalekite. And so that was interesting. I thought I'd just share this with you. This quite possibly means that he was a descendant of the Amalekite king Agag. Down through the centuries, the Amalekites and the Jews had been bitter enemies. This enmity between the two peoples stretched all the way back to Exodus, when the Israelites were first formed into a nation. During the Israelites' journey to the promised land of Canaan, the Amalekites had attacked and slaughtered the handicapped and the helpless, including the children, aged, sick, and weary, who had lagged behind the main body of travelers. There in Exodus 17 and Deuteronomy 25. The deep hostility that grew between the two groups can be seen in the war fought against the Amalekites during the reign of King Saul, 1 Samuel 15. Because of the brutal depravity of the Amalekites, God had commanded Saul to execute judgment against this terrorizing nation of people. Saul failed to carry out the commandment of God, but the prophet Samuel stepped in and did what he could, executing King Agag. So that's interesting. So we don't know. We do know it's odd that Haman it wasn't enough just to get rid of Mordecai. When he found out he was a Jew, he goes, well, I'm important enough to take care of him and his people. We don't know all of his motivations there. I know the devil was using him. And boy, the devil, he jumps in and tries to orchestrate things for awful. But guess who else likes to jump in? God. And turn things completely around. So we see his promotion. Then we see his pride. Haman's pride. He demanded honor, and he was super upset that he didn't feel honored enough. And we have to beware pride. We think, well, that person said this to me, and I deserve more respect. Again, is it just, how cliche is it when we say, well, what do you actually deserve? Hell. But then we might say that, but we live like, how dare that person treat me that way? I'm lucky to be alive. Pride. So again, verse 2, Esther 3. Verse 2, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? So the servants of Haman, the servants of the king said, Mordecai, why are you not giving this worship to Haman? By the way, are you living a life that prompts people at your work to say, hey, you don't bow before the same things we do? Why is that? Are you living a separate enough life like Mordecai where people come to you and say, why don't you bow to the things we bow to? What's different about you? And then, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, do you have an answer? So, They asked him, verse 4, now it came to pass when they spoke daily unto him that he hearkened not unto them. He did his thing, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he told them that he was a Jew. He says, well, because I'm a Jew, I belong to God, and I worship only him. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And of course, he finds out that he's a Jew as well. So I don't know how much of this is anti-Semitism. I believe that's a part of it. How much is simple pride? I think in this case they certainly worked together. But when we are convinced of our own importance, we soon become monsters. Pride, that original sin. And then, of course, we know what it turned the devil into. John 8:44, the Bible, it says that he was a murderer from the beginning and full of lies, we know. So Haman's promotion, Haman's pride, and then Haman put this plot together that I believe was satanically inspired. So he has this plot to get rid of Mordecai and Mordecai's people. All right, so verse 6. Esther 3:6. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Isn't that interesting? He thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone. I believe the idea here is he was disgusted with the thought of just taking out Mordecai. He says, oh no, this is my chance to take out him and all his people. This was going to be a gigantic decimation of human life and the very people through which God wanted to bring his son. And so he thought it scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Again, disgusted with the thought of just going after Mordecai. My revenge must be elaborate, cruel, and thorough. Boy, pride turns you into quite the monster. And pride turns you into a tool of the devil. We must beware. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the first month, so that's kind of interesting. So verse 7, it says, here they are in the first month of the year. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. So they said, hey, let's cast lots to see which day would be the best day, the luckiest day for us to take out these Jews. And so they're casting lots, and it just so happened that their lots told them the 12th month of the year. And so here's the first month of the year, and the lots, by chance, seem to say, let's take them out in the 12th month of the year. Which, of course, I see God all over that. Giving time for his plan. And by the way, again, sometimes we think, God, you don't move fast enough, but God's timing is always perfect. And so, verse 8, and Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad. So now Haman's describing things to the king. And dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom. Provinces of thy kingdom. And their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws. And that wasn't true. They kept, for the most part, the laws that they could keep. By the way, we should be the best citizens in this country that they allow us to be. Right? Can I say that again? We should be the best citizens of America that they allow us to be. Now, if they start rolling in an idol and telling us to bow down to it, we can't. We can't do it. It's like, well, you're bad citizens. No. We understand the authority that God has given you, but his authority supersedes yours. Any authority you have comes from him. And so if you demand that we defy his authority from which your authority comes, we can't do that. But we will be the best citizens this country has that you permit us to be. And so here he is accusing the people of God. And again, not all Israelites were believers like they should be, but Israel, the people of God, God's chosen people, he's accusing them, much like the devil accuses the people of God. He's the accuser of the brethren, the Bible says. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. He's saying it's actually more harm to have them around than if we just exterminated them. There's no profit in keeping them around. They're a blight upon the kingdom. Verse 9, if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver. Isn't that amazing? He so despises them that he's like, and I will even finance part of the operation to get rid of them. Wow. 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it to the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. And it says here, the Jews' enemy. Haman is called the Jews' enemy. This chapter goes on and it talks about the legislation. The legislation, how thorough it was as it went through all the land, letting them know that on such and such a day there will be this mass extermination. The legislation went forth. And of course, this is the law of the Medes and the Persians. So it seems like it went forth and nothing can stop it. Do you ever feel like the momentum of evil is so great that not even God can do something about it? Well, I think they did here. And of course, we know this story ended differently than it seemed like it was going to. Haman's hatred and revenge was such that he sought to do more than merely vent his wrath on Mordecai. Upon learning that he was a Jew, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. Therefore, Haman and his associates cast lots, the pur, to determine which would be the luckiest month to deal with the Jews. The time was noted as the 12th month of the 12th year of the king. In casting lots, they decided the 12th month would be the month to execute their plan. So the Jewish nation amongst the kingdom of Persia was to be exterminated. All right, so that's Haman, the villain. Haman. But now we turn our attention to Mordecai. All right, so there's Mordecai, and we see first his devotion, his determination. He says, I won't. I won't. Now, of course, Haman with all this, pompous pride, I don't know how much was devotion to God and how much of this not bowing was just simple orneriness. It's like, I am not going to make that guy's day. I kind of think there had to have been some orneriness there. It's like, I'm not going to bow just, for one, it's not right. And two, it will infuriate him when I don't. So I would guess him being human and me being human, I'll bet you there was some of that there. But, so we see his devotion, his determination. I won't do it. I won't do it. And he seems to have been alone. It seems like a lot of the Jews were bowing down. It seems like he seems to have been alone in this. So Esther 3, verse 2, we kind of read this already, but let's kind of look through it again from Mordecai's perspective. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandments? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, he hearkened not to them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. So, do we have something akin to what we saw what we see with the 3 Hebrew children who weren't actually all that young? Sometimes we change it to the 3 Hebrew 30-somethings. But they refused to bow to an idol, even though it placed them in danger. So there, you don't have to turn there, but in Daniel 3, verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar, it's like, I'm telling you, these guys are insane. They'll be so angry if you don't bow down. These guys blow. And again, Haman was full of wrath. And we know Nebuchadnezzar, he was so angry that they wouldn't just bow. It seems like a simple thing to do. But it was a big deal to God that I reserve worship for him alone. Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel 3:1, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 80 cubits and the breadth of it 6 cubits, and he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And of course his goal was for it to be worshipped. And many believe that it was in his likeness, an indirect worship to him. Verse 4, then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So the music played, and most of the people bowed down, except there were 3. Verse 12. They're telling Nebuchadnezzar, there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought these men before the king. Of course, he gives them another chance to bow down, and they said, we're not careful to answer you. We cannot. We will not. And they said, well, our God is able to deliver us. They knew that God could deliver them in death or from death, whichever he chose. But God is able to deliver one way or the other. That's some beautiful faith there. And we know that they were thrown into the fiery furnace, and the flames were so hot that it killed the guards that put them in there. But they just walked around, and there was another being in there with them, and that being was God himself. The ropes were burned from their bodies, and their clothing wasn't singed and didn't even smell like smoke when they came out. How amazing. How marvelous. So his determination, I cannot worship, I cannot bow down to you in this way. But if you're going to stand for God, a lot of times it brings danger. And it did for him as well. This man, Haman, was no joke. It wasn't just like Nebuchadnezzar was no joke. He had some authority. He could make some things happen. Haman had some authority. And it says, it's one thing. It's one thing to stand for God, but if someone with some authority, if they're upset about it, you better take that seriously. Sure, take it seriously. Look to the Lord and say, Lord, am I doing the right thing? And if it is, I don't care how much human authority that person has. I have to do right. Esther 3:6, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews. And he not only liked the idea, but he got the legislation passed. It was passed and sent out through the kingdom. It was Haman's big, beautiful bill. Very different. It seemed to go right past the Senate and right past the House of Representatives, and it went everywhere. Haman's big awful bill that he wanted to go out throughout the land. Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. It's one thing when your stand affects you, but boy, there's a temptation to compromise when your stand starts to affect others, right? Mordecai wouldn't bow, and not only is he in the crosshairs, but now are so all the people of Israel. But if it's right, you can't waver. Even if, once again, it places others in danger. This is so tempting to, I have to cave because the safety of others is involved here. I like what, we support NCLL, David Gibbs, and his law association helping churches, and I like their motto. He says, if it's wrong, fight it. If it's right, fight for it. And of course, a lot of us will, I believe in that, until the pressure is on. And then even when there's some pressure on, we're like, I think I'm against that. And then suddenly the pressure, it's going to affect me and somebody else. Boy, it's really tempting to cave there. But even then, Mordecai wasn't going to cave. And by the way, you think, I'm in this inescapable place. But again, doesn't God tell us in Corinthians there, where God can make a way of escape no matter the situation we're in? So Haman was infuriated. It says in verse 5, when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And once again, we talked about the momentum of evil. Don't we give God a way out sometimes? And God isn't looking for a way out. We're like, Lord, I know you mean well, but this freight train of evil, there's just so much momentum that there's nothing that can stop it. Lord, I know you would like to if you could. Don't ever give God a way out. He's bigger than any difficulty. What a beautiful story here. So we see his determination, his devotion, and we see the danger, but then we see deliverance. Deliverance. And so here is where this story just becomes so amazing, because it seems like one thing after another is piled on, and it seems like there's no way that evil cannot win. But God turns the whole thing around. And I think it's so thrilling. So we see deliverance here. So what happened? Well, God is always bigger than our difficulties. So Mordecai, of course, he's related to Esther, and Esther's the queen. She's close to the king, obviously, and so they're working together to try to figure out what to do. This legislation has been passed despite the fact that his own wife is among the people that are to be exterminated. So God begins to work this thing out. The king doesn't know her background. Haman doesn't know her background. And the wife of the king is among the people that are to be exterminated. Wow. God put that together. Esther 4, verse 13. Let's go to Esther 4. Esther 4, verse 13. So they were sending messages back and forth, Mordecai and Esther, and so there would be messengers delivering messages back and forth. And here, Mordecai sends a message to Esther. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house. He says, listen, God has placed you where you are, and he intends to use you where you are. Don't think that, maybe everyone will die but me. It crossed her mind. It's like, well, I feel bad for all y'all. But Mordecai says, listen, there's a reason why you are where you are. By the way, church member, God doesn't make a mistake. There's a reason you are where you are. And Esther could have rejected her purpose, and so can we. We can refuse to be what we're supposed to be in the place we're supposed to be. And he's telling her, listen, and listen to the faith that he has here. Because he doesn't tell Esther, and if you don't do it, all is lost. He doesn't say that. He says, if you don't obey, you'll be in trouble. And deliverance will arise from someplace else. How's that for faith? There's a reason you are where you are, and you better do what God wants you to do in the place he's placed you. Amen. Think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, it's a really good time not to say anything. No, it's time to say something. Then shalt their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. How's that for faith? But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. For who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And by the way, you say, well, that's beautiful. Big, important people have big, important jobs. But every one of us is important to God. And every one of us has a big, important job. A big, important God made you, and you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Find out what he wants you to do. We have it on the stone out there, don't we? Find God's will and do it. And you say, well, how do I do that? You get in this book. And you say, Lord, would you show me what makes you happy? And as soon as I know what makes you happy, I'm going to make that my life's work until you call me home. Well, hold on. That was too simple. I know. I think we prefer it to be overly complicated so that we don't. What a beautiful saying on that stone out there. I'm not sure what it means, but that's what it means. Lord, would you show me today and every day, would you show me what makes you happy? And I'll use the strength that is on loan from you to make that so in my life. So, verse 15, so Esther 4:15. So Esther sends a message back to Mordecai. Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer: Go, gather all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, or 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. All right, I think we can come now to my title. I think I figured it out. Coincidence or providence? Coincidence or providence? Now here, she doesn't say that we're going to fast and seek the Lord, and it doesn't say God did this or God did this, but as a believer, I can't help but see this and see God's hand at work all over the story. But it doesn't say God did this, and they cried out to God, and we have these prayers. One could look at this and say, wow, that's an amazing coinky-dink. Coincidence or providence? We see that God wakes up the king. And it doesn't say that God wakes up the king. But the king goes to sleep. Or he tries to. He goes to bed. He goes to bed. And he's tossing and turning. I would imagine there's a good chance his bed is the most comfortable bed in the whole world. Would you imagine that's probably a safe bet? He might have the most comfortable, the most fluffy pillows in all the world. Well, he probably went to bed hungry. I doubt it. So he goes to sleep. Well, he goes to bed, again, one night, and he can't sleep. And it doesn't say God kept him up. So that's the question. Coincidence? What a lucky thing. What a lucky thing that the king couldn't sleep that night, because it turned the whole situation around. No, the truth is that when God decides to reverse a situation, he does. Our God is big and wonderful. All right, so let's go to Esther 6. Esther 6. Coincidence or providence? Coincidence or providence? Esther 6, verse 1. Are you there? Esther 6, verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep. And he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles. It's like, bring me the history books. Again, that makes sense. I can't sleep, bring me history. I know Mr. Reinhardt and history lovers, John Bertrell back there. No, the history lovers are like, I made the mistake of pulling out a history book, up all night. And then most everybody else, it's like, I couldn't sleep, so I pulled out a history book. Bring the book of the records of the Chronicles. And they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana. Again, that's just a funny sounding name, huh? I wonder if there was Tiny Thana and then there was Bigthana. I don't know. Mordecai, it was told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. So as he's reading, he's like, hey, there was a guy named Mordecai that saved my life some time ago. So let's look at that story real fast. You can turn there if you want, but Esther chapter 2. When had Mordecai saved his life? Back in Esther chapter 2. Esther chapter 2, we'll start in verse 11. So with Esther, when Esther was chosen to be the queen, Mordecai started hanging around the palace. Verse 11, Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. And then we can jump to verse 16. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head. She became queen, and he made her queen instead of Vashti. Verse 20. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people. So Esther did not reveal that she was a Jew to Ahasuerus, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. So even though she was the queen, she still respected the wisdom of this guardian in her life. That's pretty amazing, huh? I'm the queen now, I don't have to listen. All right, a quick sideline there. Verse 21, in those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. They thought, we're going to kill him. We're angry with King Ahasuerus, and we're going to kill him. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. So she went to the king somehow and said, listen, Mordecai found out about this threat against you, and she made sure it went into the record books that he was the one that brought the report. Verse 23, and when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. And so this seems like just a little story in Esther chapter 2. Here we are chapters later, but here he overhears this thing, and of course, we might say, well, he did this wonderful deed. I wonder if he was ever rewarded for it. Sometimes, boy, no good deed goes unpunished. But you know, down here, sometimes we do forget the good that people do, but God never forgets. And he made sure at the right time, this was again brought to the attention of the king. He couldn't sleep. Bring me the history books. And they read, and in there they say, and there was these two guys that went to kill you. He's like, oh, yes, I remember. People killing me. That's an unpleasant thought. Tell me more. What happened? Well, there was this guy, Mordecai, that brought it to our attention. We're able to investigate it, and your life was saved. Yes, Mordecai. And then he asked the question, tell me, did we ever do anything nice for the guy? Talk about God's timing. Coincidence or providence. All right, back to chapter 6. Are you still in chapter 6? So we just read that the keepers of the door. So Esther 6, verse 3. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. We did nothing. He saved your life, and we did squat for him. Verse 4, and the king says, well, somebody needs to honor him. Who's around? Find out who's around right now. Go look out in the court and find out who happens to be around right now. Verse 4, and the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward court. So Haman happened to be moseying in at the time where they're looking for somebody to honor Mordecai. And again, I say happening. He happens to come in. And we know it's God's timing. Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king. He was come to ask the king if he could hang Mordecai. You see it there? To speak unto the king to hang Mordecai. He is walking in to ask the king, hey, do you mind if I execute Mordecai? There's this guy, I don't like him, I'd like to kill him. If you just sign here real fast, no big deal. And before, Mordecai has something Haman has something on his mind, but the king has something on his mind. And so it's like, well, okay, hi, Haman. Hey, you got something on your mind? Well, me first. Verse 5, and the king's servants said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? He has to be talking about me. And Haman answered the king, well, I want to execute Mordecai, but this is a fun thought. This is a fun rabbit trail to go down, and he probably wants to honor me. So honoring me first, killing Mordecai later. Let's talk about this. For the man whom the king delighted to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear. Dress him up in your clothes. and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head, let his apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal, whom the king delighted to honor, and bring him on horseback throughout the street of the city, and proclaim before him, yelling out, this guy's amazing. To walk before and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man who the king delighteth to honor. Then the king said to Haman, make haste. Take the apparel and the horse. You can see Haman's eyes lighting. He's like, yeah. Take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai, the Jew. I bet you he was about to have a stroke. That sitteth at the king's gate, let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. So Haman is commanded to honor Mordecai, and again, you're wondering, how long is this sermon going to go, right? We're having fun, but I am finishing up. And so if you don't know the rest of the story, Esther, she's got to go in before the king uninvited, which was punishable by death. And I have the same rule at my house. I mean, when you're busy, you're busy. But if you go uninvited, the king has a choice to raise his scepter or not. And if he doesn't, you came uninvited, you die. So you better have something important to say. Esther comes before the king. In his graciousness, he raises the scepter. The king shows her graciousness, and she invites him and Haman to a banquet. Haman is amazed. And he's like, wow, I must be really important. And Esther puts on this banquet, and then she invites them to a second banquet. And then at this banquet, she says this in Esther chapter 7. So let's go to Esther 7, verse 3. Esther 7, verse 3. She's speaking to the king, and Haman is sitting there. If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king, Ahasuerus, answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he? Where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? Somebody's after you? Who is it? And again, Haman's like, there's a group of people that somebody's going after? I wonder what that's about. And Esther says, the adversary, an enemy, is this wicked Haman. As we know in the story, things go from bad to worse. He's fearing for his life, and he does some things, and the king, it makes the king even more angry. And then in verse 9, it says, and so the king is angry at Haman. And there's that person that has this factoid that's ready to share. So there's this there's a chamberlain, Harbona, in verse 9. He's got this little factoid. He's like, well, you're angry at Haman, and guess what? I know something that may be interesting to you. So Harbona, in verse 9, one of the king's chamberlains, said also before the king, behold, also the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. Coincidence or providence? Proverbs 21 verse 1 reminds us the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and he turneth it whithersoever he will. And that's why Pastor Vogelin preached on it some months ago in Sunday school, there in 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 2, to pray for those that are in authority, that we could live a quiet and peaceable life. God's will is for all men to be saved. I do. It's on my prayer list. Back here in my study, there's a time of the day where I open up my computer and I have a prayer list there, and I take time, and part of it is praying for authority on the federal level and on the state level, on the local level. And I regret that I don't do it more often. And I regret that it took me so long to get serious about it. The heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord. So Haman is hanged. And remember when he was having that party with Zeresh and all the friends? And they're like, ooh, build a gallows and get rid of him. So there's Haman's wife and all of his buddies, and they're watching him dangle from the gallows that they told him to build for Mordecai. And you wonder whatever happened to them. Brother Hunt was sharing this thought with me last week. You wonder if it was almost like Potiphar in the book of Genesis, coming home one day and saying, hey, hun, you remember that fella that used to work here? And you said that he attacked you and was dishonorable to you, and so I threw him in jail? Uh-huh. Well, I sure hope, for your sake, that you were being honest, because I report to him tomorrow. God turned the whole situation around. You know, the lot that was cast to pick the day that the Jews would be destroyed. There's a feast that they celebrate today, to this very day, the Feast of Purim, when that day of destruction, God transformed into a day of deliverance instead. I read this, it says, each year during the holiday of Purim, Jewish leaders around the world read the book of Esther to excited crowds in the synagogues. Adults, and especially children, wait eagerly for the reading of Esther chapter 3. Because of this story, in chapter 3, their fun begins. Verse 1 introduces Haman, the villain of the story, and each time the reader mentions his name, 53 times throughout Esther, the synagogue erupts with a raucous noise. Horns blow, rattles shake, children shout, adults jeer. With zealous glee, synagogue members try to drown out the mention of his name with their uproar. They do so because the book of Esther, in there, he is without a doubt the villain, the archetypal enemy of the Jews. His evil deeds in chapter 3 create the central conflict of the book that can only be resolved by Queen Esther's courageous acts to save her people. But we know God stepped in. We know that God stepped in. So what do we learn tonight? Haman, he had that promotion. But you know, depending on who's promoting you, it's not always good, is it? Promotion doesn't matter if we aren't living a life honoring to God. Haman teaches us also that pride is so dangerous. When pride starts to take over, we start plotting in this life to accomplish our own ends. We become manipulative. And we've all been there. At some point, we've all been manipulative. Pride comes, and I'm going to work out the little details to accomplish what makes sense to me. Oh, Lord, help us. Deliver us from such things. Instead, let's be like Mordecai. Determined in this life, I'm only going to worship God. I want to live a life that causes other people to say, hey, I notice you don't bow to the same things I do. Would you tell me why? Well, because I belong to God. And it might become dangerous when you stand for right things. And then the pressure when it's like, well, if it was just me, but it might affect my family too. Well, right is right, no matter the cost. And we also learn from this precious book that God is able to deliver. Mordecai learned that, and so did the 3 Hebrew 30-somethings. So everything seemed lost. And then God wouldn't let the king sleep. Coincidence or providence? God is at work. Do you see it? Oh, every single day for the rest of our life. Lord, I believe today you will be at work. Can I be a part of what you're doing? Coincidence or providence? Let's pray. Lord, we love you. Thank you for your goodness, and thank you for this story, Lord. And I didn't even go through all of it. How beautiful, Lord. How beautiful. Oh God, everything seemed lost. Everything seemed lost. And then you stepped in. And the king couldn't sleep. And everything fell into place in a way that no one could have imagined. Oh Lord, you at work is so beautiful. Thank you for your goodness. Lord, help us, Lord, to be wary of that pride that turned Haman into a monster. Lord, we're sinners as well. And there are times where our pride draws us to the point where we could be a monster and a manipulator. Lord, oh God, help us to be humble. Lord, help us also learn from Mordecai. I learned that devotion, I can only worship God. We also can learn from Esther, Lord, that it could have crossed her mind to, well, maybe I'll be safe in this place that I'm at. No, God didn't give you that place so you could be safe from what he's doing. God put you there so that you could be a part of what he is doing. Lord, help us by faith to seek you and not to say, well, God has a will for others. No, God has a will for every single one of us. Help us, Lord, to love you and to trust you, and by faith embrace the life that you have for us. Oh, the danger, but the great deliverance. And we know, Lord, at the end of the book there was fighting, but as a result, Lord, the Jews were able to fight and overcome the enemies. Oh, Lord, there was great deliverance. Oh, God, you are the great deliverer, the great reverser. Once again, Lord, I can't help but think of the darkest day in human history when in our pride and arrogance we nailed the Son of God to a tree. But we know, God, that you permitted it and transformed the darkest day of our existence into the brightest and most beautiful day of your mercy and your grace, when Jesus died for us and then rose from the dead 3 days later. Oh God, the great deliverer, help us to follow you. Lord, do a work this week in the lives of the young people. And Lord, do a work in our hearts. Bless this time of invitation. Lord, may we give you whatever it is that you want, trusting you fully, embracing what you have for us. We ask these things in Christ's precious name. Amen.